All right, we're live. My name is Alex Simon, Director of Development and Communication at Legal Aid Society of New York. With me today is Karlene Archer, and she is a staff attorney in our Syracuse office, and we are going to talk about bankruptcy, Chapter 7, the benefits of it, what to know beforehand, as well as our partnership with SU Law School, and interesting stuff, I think, on some student loans as well that I think is pretty cutting edge in terms of the legal industry. But Karlene, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself, talk about your, relationship with the law, like how long you've been working in bankruptcy and how long you've been with legal aid?
Yes. So I am a bankruptcy lawyer by trade. I've been practicing bankruptcy law for 9 years. I got interested in bankruptcy from a professor I had at Boston College, where I went to law school. Her name's Ingrid Hillinger. I'm sure a lot of you know her if you've been practicing bankruptcy law. After law school, I practiced at a big firm in Boston for 4 years, where I mostly did corporate bankruptcy work. But then after the national mortgage settlement, I also started practicing some consumer bankruptcy, where I represented a large national bank. Then I met my husband, and he had to move to Nashville. So I moved to Nashville and practiced for a Southeast regional firm there for about 3-ish years, where I continued to do consumer bankruptcy work on the creditor side. I did a lot of consumer bankruptcy compliance work, mostly in Chapter 13. I know a lot about Chapter 13, a lot about mortgages, and a lot about escrow payments in Chapter 13. But then we moved to Syracuse, and I started with legal aid back in January and have now moved into the Chapter 7 world and am focusing more on Chapter 7 and more on student loans.
Wow. So we are definitely lucky to have you. This is exciting. So you mentioned Chapter 13. So our audience is mainly meant for, clients, potential clients. So talk to me just about somebody that's not familiar with bankruptcy. What is bankruptcy? What are all the chapters?
Sure. And there's a lot of chapters.
Yeah. Go ahead.
And some of them are new. So, and I might get into kind of bankruptcy nerds type stuff, but I'll try to focus it more on what our potential clients might be more interested in. But let me gloss over some of the other stuff first. That's kind of interesting. So we have the stuff that is kind of interesting, but not really what we're talking about today, is Chapter 9 and Chapter 12. Chapter 9 is for municipalities. So if you've heard like Central Falls, Rhode Island filed for bankruptcy, or Jefferson County, Alabama filed for bankruptcy, that would be under Chapter 9. So that's not what we're going to be focused on. Then Chapter 12 is for family farmers. It's similar to a Chapter 13. Some people in our area actually might be interested in Chapter 12, but it's really for family, small farms and fishermen. Then there's Chapter 11. Chapter 11 is really, you think of it more as a corporate reorganization. You can file for Chapter 11 if you are an individual. A lot of times what we see with that is high net worth individuals, or people with, if they're kind of small landlords. So if they have a number of mortgages, a number of properties, they'll file for Chapter 11. Our potential clients are going to be more focused on Chapter 13, which is for people with really regular monthly income, or Chapter 7, which is more of they call it a straight bankruptcy or a liquidation. So corporations and individuals can file for Chapter 7. It's really kind of it's an in and out type bankruptcy. You go in and you say, listen, I can't really pay for all of these things. I've had a lot of times it's people who have had kind of major setbacks, a major illness, a job loss, that kind of thing. You don't have regular monthly income that can pay your bills, and you need to handle all of your debts kind of at once, not through the 3 to 5 year Chapter 13 bankruptcy plan.
Hmm.
So those are all kinds of bankruptcies that there are. Individuals are really going to be focused on Chapter 13, where you can keep your house by paying your mortgage and paying your arrears for 3 to 5 years. That's typically what it's for. It's for people who want to catch up on their past mortgage payments. Or Chapter 7, where you probably don't have a mortgage, you don't own your home, or you own your home outright and want to keep it.
Okay. And so, what are the benefits of going through Chapter 7 or the other bankruptcies? I mean, are they similar? What does it provide?
Sure. So you'll hear a lot when you're looking at bankruptcy. You'll hear the bankruptcy provides you with a fresh start. It also provides you with some breathing room. So if you're getting a lot of phone calls from debt collectors, you have a lot of outstanding debt and you're getting phone calls all the time, it's going to provide you with what's called the automatic stay. So as soon as you file for bankruptcy, those debtors need to stop calling you. So they immediately stop. They stop sending you letters. There's some, if you have a mortgage or kind of a continual loan, there's going to be some exceptions to that. But typically they'll just stop sending you letters, stop making phone calls. You get some breathing room to kind of, I need to deal with all of my debts and I want somebody else to handle it for me.
Right.
That's really what happens is you give the bankruptcy court all of your information. In Chapter 7 and a Chapter 13, you'll have a trustee. They have different roles in each chapter, but they're going to be handling most of the kind of the, dealing with all of your debts and your assets for you. So you get somebody else to look at it for you, especially if you have an attorney, either through legal aid or private attorney. You also have that person on your side to deal with the trustee, help you deal with the trustee, and go over your paperwork for you. So that's kind of when you first file for bankruptcy. When you get through to the end of your bankruptcy, you have your fresh start. So most of the typical debts that you will have will be discharged in your bankruptcy, particularly if it's a Chapter 7. So you won't have those credit card companies calling you anymore. You won't have, the debt collectors for your medical debt calling you anymore. Those debts are gone. So that's the benefits of a bankruptcy.
So you said fresh start. So when would this be, something that I, consider working with, calling LASMNY or trying to seek out an attorney? Fresh start sounds awesome for people.
Sure does.
Yeah. Is there what's kind of the
timeline?
Not just the timeline, but the stress test. Like what situation do I need to be in to really start considering this as an option?
So there's a couple of, it's kind of a comprehensive kind of looking at everything. If you've suffered a major setback and you're just completely overwhelmed by your bills and I cannot pay these, I'm not going to be able to pay these, I've lost my job, I've had a major medical issue. A lot of times people get divorced and they realize they can't really deal with the bills that they've been left with. So you have a major life happening. You can't deal with the bills that you have. So that's really when you should call. And we have at LASMNY, we have screening clinics. So you have a kind of a very experienced bankruptcy attorney that will be able to look at all of your information and determine, do you need to file for bankruptcy right now? There's also something called basically your collection proof, you cannot, your judgment proof, and you can't have debts collected against you. That's based on state kind of garnishment laws, but you might not be making enough for the debt collection agencies to seek a judgment against you, so that our bankruptcy attorney might see that and say, listen, you don't really need to file for bankruptcy. These debts might hang around, but the debt collectors know that you can't pay them, so you don't need to file. You can if you want to. So basically this attorney will look at your information, say you need to file right now, you don't need to file at all, or you know what, you don't need to file right now, but you might want to file a little bit later.
Okay.
And so for those people, we have a great relationship with the Syracuse University Law School. They have a bankruptcy clinic where you get a law student and an experienced bankruptcy lawyer who's their professor to help you through the process. So that's kind of on a semester schedule. We refer a number of cases over to them so that the law student can work through the paperwork with you. It might not be for people who, especially if you're calling right now in May, we might be referring you to them to file maybe as, you know, as far into January for the spring semester. Right. So if you don't need to file right now, but you do need to file, we might refer you to Syracuse so you can work through their clinic. But basically, you have a major event, you can't deal with your bills, or it's just become way too much for you. Call us and we can decide with you whether you need to file, who is going to help you. We also are working closely with an organization called Upsolve, which is a platform. It's basically like TurboTax for bankruptcy. So you go through an online module, you file actually on your own. We call that pro se. So you file on your own, but you get Upsolve's help with the paperwork, basically. So you answer a bunch of questions from them. You get to file on your own. It's a free tool, and they've helped a ton of people. And if we say, you know, you need to file, but your case is really simple. You have, you know, this credit card debt and you have no income, or your only income is disability or something like that. You can actually go through Upsolve, do it yourself. It's not going to be that big of a deal. And it's going to be quick. And so if you need technological assistance, you can call us and we can help you through the Upsolve platform, but you might be able to do it on your own. So again, you have a major event or it just gets too overwhelming, you call us, we get to work through the process with you, know when you're going to file, how you're going to file, and who's going to help you.
Okay. And you have a really good, give you a little bit of a shout out, kind of a chapter 7 kind of, I guess it kind of walks through everything that you need.
Yes.
We published that on our YouTube page. Go ahead. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I'm pretty excited about that. So one thing that happens when you call us and we say, yes, you need to file for bankruptcy and we're going to help you, or we're going to refer you to a pro bono attorney, you get a huge packet. And I've been a bankruptcy lawyer. Like I've told you, I've been a bankruptcy lawyer for 9 years. I would have a hard time with this paperwork. It's a lot of questions. It asks you your financial history for up to the past 10 years, depending on what the question is, who you've paid in the last 2 years. It's a lot of information. It all basically who you owe, what you own. You have to go through all of these questions. It's 53 pages. And so that can be really overwhelming. If you're calling us, you've already got a lot of problems. You've had a major life event. You're like completely overwhelmed financially. We don't want you to be also overwhelmed by the process of filing for bankruptcy. So what we did is we recorded a video where I go through. You can hear my voice. I go through the 53-page questionnaire and explain to you kind of where you can get all of this information and why we need it. Because you might see like, what are you talking about? You need to know whether I paid my Aunt Linda 6 months ago when I borrowed money from her like 5 years ago. That's very important. And I explained to you in the video why we need to know this information, why the trustee will need to know that information. And you might get a little bit of like bankruptcy nerd stuff in the video as well.
Well, it's awesome too, because it's, it's so in depth in terms of the legal knowledge that, it's really hard for a lot of people to access that information. So I think it's going to be good. What I'd like to do actually is I might publish all the videos because we combined it into one huge video that's pretty lengthy, but you can pause it and play it at your leisure. But I might upload those onto a web page, and then that way people can digest them by kind of section.
Yeah, and I think
help.
one thing you and I are going to work on in the near future is putting together a website of a lot of different resources for people. So it will be the Upsolve stuff. There's a bunch of organizations that help people with bankruptcy. There's also great bankruptcy podcasts that you can listen to if you're thinking about bankruptcy. I've listened to a bunch of them recently, and they're super. They can be super, super helpful, even if they're geared towards attorneys. It might be something that you might want to listen to.
Yeah.
My old bar association, the Boston Bar Association, has a great training on Chapter 7. It's about 4 hours long, but there's some very experienced bankruptcy attorneys and judges talking about the Chapter 7 process, which can be helpful if you're just interested in it like I am, or you just want to get some kind of nuggets of knowledge from experienced Chapter 7 trustees. So there's a lot of information out there. It can be totally overwhelming, but we're hoping that between the YouTube video and maybe this little website that we're going to put together, people will be able to just access things that are helpful and more simple.
So we foreshadowed this question a little bit a while ago, and there's no typical probably bankruptcy case, but what is the time, maybe a traditional timeline for Chapter 7?
Sure. Chapter 7 is from filing to discharge is around 4 to 6 months. It can be shorter. It can be a lot longer depending on kind of what's going on. But that's really, hopefully it's within the 4 to 6 month range. And I'll tell you something, there's a secret about Chapter 7 that if you kind of, if you are paying attention to a lot of this stuff, that you might never meet with a judge if you file for Chapter 7. So you might not ever have to go into a courtroom, particularly now where things are still going on remotely. The only person you might meet with that's like a person of authority is the Chapter 7 trustee. So that can be definitely intimidating, but but this person's just a lawyer, just like me, that is going to, ask you some questions about your paperwork. And then that's kind of the only meeting that you have. So if you have a really simple case, it's a really simple process. I mean, the paperwork going into it can be complicated, but you just meet with the Chapter 7 trustee. It's called a 341 meeting. If your paperwork is really simple, you won't have any creditors asking you questions. They can ask questions at that meeting, but they usually don't. Having been on the creditor side, I'll tell you that they usually don't. And then that's kind of it. You just wait after the 341 meeting, you just wait for the judge's signature to say you have a discharge, and you never have to go to court.
That's awesome.
It is.
So I guess we talked a little bit about SU Law School Upsolve. Do we want to talk about a little bit of the article that you wrote? And the headline is, and it's in New York State Bar Association's Pro Bono magazine. But Legal Services of Mid New York, Legal Aid Society of Mid New York receives Pro Bono Innovation Fund grant to expand pro bono bankruptcy assistance. So do you want to talk a little bit about the Innovation Fund grant and the broader picture of this program?
Yes. So this is kind of what I joined LASMNY to help with. So it's the Pro Bono Innovation Fund. It's a project grant. So we received funds from Legal Services Corporation to expand the number of pro bono attorneys that are going to be able to help our potential debtors with filing for bankruptcy. Either kind of full representation, walking you through your Chapter 7 case, or with our screening and advice clinics, which are the clinics I talked about, where we go over with you whether you should file for bankruptcy or not, and when. And then helping some people out with Upsolve. So that's the first part of our grant, is kind of expanding our panel of pro bono attorneys that can help either pro se debtors using Upsolve or full representation or screening and advice clinics. The other part of that grant is expanding or further developing the case law on discharging student loans. So you might hear a lot. This is another secret of bankruptcy, is that student loans can be discharged in bankruptcy. You hear all the time that they can't. That's not true. It is very hard to do it. And they aren't typically, you have to do a special process called an adversary proceeding. You basically have to sue your student loan creditor in bankruptcy and say, listen, these, the magic words are undue hardship. These student loans are causing me an undue hardship. You have to meet some pretty strict criteria to basically, you've tried in the past to pay your student loans. You can't currently pay your student loans without basically going without some necessities, and you have kind of exceptional circumstances that mean that you are really not going to be able to pay your student loans. So that's kind of what this current standard is, and it's pretty hard to get your student loans discharged, but it's not impossible. And so we're looking for some debtors who have student loans who kind of meet this criteria, or maybe barely meet this criteria, and will be able to get their student loans discharged, and also maybe develop that case law a little bit.
Yeah, it's really interesting. It is something that I think you hear a lot, is the one thing that can't be, one type of debt that really can't be. There might be others. You know this more than I, but it's something that what I hear, I think in other areas is student loan debt can't be forgiven, and you're going, wow, holy cow, that's heavy.
Right. Especially there's people that is the majority of their debt. I mean, a lot of people don't take out a lot of credit card debt because they have a ton of student loans. I mean, we're seeing right now there's 40 million plus people who owe student loans, and there's $1.6 trillion in student loan debt that's out there. We know that not all of those people are going to be able to pay that student loan debt. We're seeing, a lot of people out of work right now because of coronavirus. That's continuing, and a lot of people aren't going to be able to go back to work because of, the way things are right now. And so student loans it's a difficult payment. Even if you're on income-based repayment, you have to recertify that every year. It's based on your last year's tax return. So if something has changed recently, that can really affect the way things are, and that you won't be able to pay. But that's not a reason to not try. So you might have heard that you can't just charge your student loans. You might have heard it's really difficult, but there's definitely a reason to try.
Yeah, any movement in that area is just so uplifting, I think, because there's just millions of students, and this probably in law schools. I have friends that have attended law schools where there's a lot of student debt that comes out of that experience, and it's just great that there's movement happening to uplift quite honestly now generations of folks that are in the working that are in their mid-careers now, that can start to alleviate, even if it's just a little movement, some of the student debt. It would be tremendously impactful. So
and student debt is one of the things that exacerbates the racial wealth gap as well. So you have like generational wealth and generational wealth gaps that where there's people who, with that generational wealth, they just they don't have to take out student loans. And so they don't. And then there's people who do have to take out student loans, even for, people say, oh, well, if you can just go to a state school. Well, state schools are expensive too. And, and you still have to pay for them. So there's still student debt that comes out of that. There's student debt that comes out of trade schools and community colleges. And so there's people that can pay for that and people that can't. And then that student debt can be exacerbated. And there's a lot of people that, because of the interest rate on student loans, and that amount can just double and double and double. So so hopefully we'll be able to make some movement on that, because bankruptcy is a great tool. It's difficult. It's time consuming. It can impact your life for a couple of years, but for people that really need it, it's really worth it. And so hopefully that can help student loan debtors as well.
Yeah, this is exciting stuff. Let's see. I'm just going over my list of questions. Is there anything that I missed or anything that you want to touch on as far as bankruptcy, LASMNY, anything like that?
I don't think so. I do want to say, if anybody wants to talk about bankruptcy, I'm always available to talk about it. I love talking about it. If there's any local lawyers or not so local lawyers out there that want to help out, I'd love to hear from you. And if people are interested, we are hopefully going to be hosting a webinar on student loan dischargeability and kind of the current legislative proposals as well, because there's legislation out there, and there's considerations from this administration to straight forgive student loans. So hopefully we'll be hosting a webinar on that pretty soon.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for joining me today. It was an awesome conversation. We're going to continue to build out some of the bankruptcy resources on our website, as well as through other social media channels. If you need assistance or you want to have an intake through LASMNY, you can do so by going to www.lasmny.org, or you can call our hotline. Let me make sure I get the number right, because I have mild dyslexia, and I might get the number wrong. There we are. 1-877-777-6152. That's 1-877-777-6152. If one of our intake paralegals is unavailable, they will return your call. So yeah, please go through our intake process and go to lasmny.org for additional resources. My name's Alex Simon, and this was Karlene Archer, and yeah, thanks so much.
Nice to talk to you.
Thank you. Good talking to you.